Hiya, welcome to this, finally, my 109th episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, sifting my basket of media memories, and in this installment, titled Luther, Ernest and The Doctor, the pilot episode of BBC profiler Luther turned up in my classic collection, brilliant insights of my friend and media critic Mikey Heinrich, I chat about Grey's Anatomy, Undercovers, the importance of being earnest, and wait, hold it, stop, hold on, I wasn't gonna spend any time on this one. The 2010 MTV Video Music Awards I found on disc 20.6, was that Chelsea Handler taking the stage as Lady Gaga in a sparkly hat shaped like a modern split-level ranch with an attached garage. Nice. Welcome to the show. He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy. Starting off with a couple weird coincidences. I love boring you all with connective tissue like this, so episode 18 of VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack featured artist Nina Simone, whose work I encountered in the series' production of Luther, which first couple episodes of that series turned up in this set of cataloging on discs 2014 and 2021. Then, also in this set of cataloging, disc 2010, I found a fourth season episode of Chuck featuring Dead Man's Party by Oingo Boingo, one of the influences I'll be highlighting in my next episode 19 of VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack. Plus, purest coincidence, but it is so wild that disc 2010 so randomly ended up exclusively filled with 2010 content, given, how arbitrary was this transfer and cataloging process. Secondly, I was having a lot of trouble getting this one written up because, I really thought that as I got into the final stretch here, I'd start encountering truly from the vaults types of recordings that I know are hiding back there. I mean, I have got some lunacy on deck in this final set of discs in my classic collection, which I'm still looking forward to because, once again, most of the material for this set was stuff I'd covered already, so I figured a short episode, right? Cousin Belky, you were...
Don't be ridiculous.
True enough. However, also last time I mentioned my conversation with my friend, Minneapolis-based musician, singer-songwriter Mikey Heinrich. I featured among my M artists and sister podcast, VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack. But Mikey and I also chatted about other stuff, and goodness, seems I've kept you all waiting plenty long enough. I give you part 2 of my conversation with musician, but also blogger and media critic extraordinaire, Mikey Heinrich. Mikey, please introduce yourself.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Mikey Heinrich, and we go back quite some few years, actually, at this point now.
Long-time media commentary extraordinaire, and we all share a Brian, which is far too inside baseball, no one's going to get that. But I want to welcome you to VideoFuzzy.
Oh, thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Hey, I've wanted to feature your brilliant insights in this podcast for years now. So glad I'm finally able to.
I just apologize for not having been able to make it happen for you for this long.
No, I'm really glad because it kind of makes this stand out, honestly. We don't have anything prepared. It'll start here. Wake up, Dead Man.
Oh, so good.
Rian Johnson's latest Benoit Blanc adventure from last fall seems like a lifetime ago now.
It really does.
What did you think of that? What did you think of that one?
Oh, I loved it, first of all. My main disappointment with Wake Up Dead Man was that this was the first out of the 3 that I didn't manage to see in the movie theater. I had to wait and see it on Netflix. Mm-hmm. And I didn't sour the experience, but I would have loved to have seen it in the movie theater. I love that he went smaller scale with it, after Glass Onion. I love that the structure is so different. It's odd how little Benoit Blanc is in it for the first hour. I don't think it's a flaw. I think that, it's a deliberate choice, and they structured it that way for a reason, and it works. It's just, after Glass Onion, it feels so different. But yeah, loved it. The characters were all great. I was actually totally unfamiliar with the main actor, Josh
O'Connor.
Yes, Josh O'Connor, that's it.
Father Diplomacy. Josh Brolin as well.
Yeah, I thought he was fantastic.
Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, holy God.
Josh Brolin is having the strangest career, isn't he? Just this last year, I just, like a week before watching Wake Up Dead Man, finally got around to watching Weapons. Just the contrast between those two. Oh yeah, that is such a good movie. And it was not what I was expecting, that movie. I know that this makes me 12 years old, but I will never stop laughing about the joke about how dare they come and paint rocket ships all over his room. That was just so ridiculous.
Well, the one that got me, and I thought the best way of making sure we all knew how friggin' rigor mortis said was flipping him off the table onto the examining floor, but it's like, okay, no, that guy is as dead as, I think right now he might actually be made out of styrofoam.
The bizarre glee that Daniel Craig had when he was playing with his stomach, too. I've got to imagine that that's something Daniel Craig came in with. It was like, it would be funny if I did. And they just ran with it.
He's always got something like first one where he's just playing that one note during the interview, and it's like, ding! Jamie Lee Curtis. What? Who is that? I haven't spoken yet, so you don't even know how hilarious I am.
Oh, man. Apparently, the very first time the rest of the cast heard him do that accent was the big final speech where he talks about how they're not getting bailed out this time and they're vultures at the feast. And that was the first time any of them heard him do that ridiculous accent. And I can't even imagine what being in that scene at that moment must have felt like.
CSI KFC.
That was good.
I love his character, and it just feels like, okay, Bond is fantastic. You can play Bond, and he played Bond maybe just a second too long, but it also, he lived that role throughout. Really wonderfully. He can play Benoit Blanc for the rest of his life.
Oh my God, I would watch a million more of those movies. And from everything I've heard, Daniel Craig and Rian Johnson are kind of both also on that same page of we're just going to keep doing these as long as anyone is willing to pay us to do them because we love them.
They're so good. And the thing that I've really loved about them is just how different each installment has been.
Yeah.
But how clear the reference to, I can see so many Christie references, and he actually, came right out and said, if you read these books, you would know exactly what was going on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan. I've read all of her books many, many times. And when they were listing them down, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that totally makes sense.
I thought did a beautiful job. And if I had any complaint whatsoever, it was I feel like it could have benefited from a little more editing. I just felt like it felt so front-loaded. Like you said, he didn't show up for just about the first hour. And, or there's just a little of him at the beginning.
Yeah, very little. And I know that it was done deliberately, but things did feel really muddy during the section where, I'm blanking on names because I'm terrible with names, but where the priest is running down that woody path in the rain and he sees Monsignor Wicks coming out of the tomb and resurrected, walks across, and then he slips and falls, and then there's that montage of really weird, off-putting imagery, which, is obviously deliberately there to reflect his mindset so that you're not sure what's real and what's not.
Exactly.
But it took me out of the movie just a little bit by being that disoriented.
And I know he does this, because in the first one he had that scene in the laundromat.
Oh, yeah, same exact feeling.
And it was like, okay, all of a sudden this moved from being a cozy to a horror film, just enough, and then slid right back, because of course then you have Benoit Blanc singing in the car, which
that is one of the all-time best edits ever.
It's good. I love the storytelling. It's not all anything. It's not all an homage. But I mean, there's enough that he's referenced that you can really, if you're a longtime Agatha Christie fan, you can really respect the atmosphere that he's created. The people that he's brought in to play these.
Yeah.
Oh my God. These are casts.
You really do get the feeling like he could literally call anyone and they would agree to come do it at this point.
Well, they're so good.
It reminds me a lot in that aspect of Only Murders in the Building. And that, you've got these guys that just are clearly insanely likable and know everyone and can literally call Meryl Streep and say, hey, you want to be on our show? And she'd be like, sure. There's not a lot of people on the list that could do that.
Yes. It makes for a really fun watch. And like I said, I'm always hoping that They're all my favorite. I think the first one with Christopher Plummer was just astonishing. It got the bus on the road so well.
It did. I met him once, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I worked at the State Orpheum Theaters right out of college in Minnesota here in Minneapolis. And I worked in the box office, and as one of the full-time staff, one of the things that you would periodically get assigned to do is to do things for the visiting cast that had come through. And Christopher Plummer came in. I don't remember what show he was doing, but I was assigned to show him down to the dressing rooms. We're in this kind of maze of tunnels below the theater, and it was just he and I, and it was in the evening, so no one was around. It was totally empty. It was dead silent, and he was the most terrifying person I have ever been in proximity with. Like, nothing he said or did, he was perfectly polite, but he was just effortlessly intimidating, like to the point where I was like, I might not make it out of these catacombs alive.
Wow, though. I mean, yeah. Well, I mean that if you're talking about a presence,
yeah,
he certainly brings it. And it's,
God, yeah.
And one of the things I'd wanted to chat with, and got held up because I was hoping to get to Minneapolis, and it just didn't happen. But Doctor Who.
Yes.
I'd really wanted to talk to you about Ncuti Gatwa, because most recently I've been talking about the problems I've been having getting the damn classic collection to play on Tubi. That's been annoying. I think they've run it on BritBox now, so it's probably available. But
I think it is again, but I'm not 100% sure.
What were your thoughts about him as 15?
I absolutely adored Ncuti Gatwa. He just had that great energy. I loved how unapologetically queer they made the entire ethos of his Doctor. I thought that was fantastic. I do wonder what really happened with Millie Gibson behind this, if that was always the plan, because at times it felt like it was always planned for her to leave and then kind of be tangential in the second season, but the other times it felt like that was a weird join, and I think it would be interesting to know what really happened there. That said, I loved Belinda. I thought she was a great character. I don't know. I think ultimately the problem, if problem this is, the situation with Ncuti Gatwa ultimately was they wanted to bring back David Tennant as a surprise 14th Doctor. Jodie Whittaker's going to regenerate. We're all expecting it's going to be Ncuti Gatwa. And what? It's David Tennant? What's going on? But they had to arrange that so far in advance, because it was like a year out from the centenary episode where that was going to happen, where, they announced Jodie was leaving and that Ncuti was going to be cast as the next Doctor. So he had to wait that year. And then he had to wait even longer to start because suddenly David Tennant was there for the specials. And he was still committed to shooting the final season of Sex Education, which is fantastic, by the way. If anybody hasn't watched it, that show is so good. So, as a result of that, the time between... There's a natural fame curve for actors that take on the role of the Doctor. They start generally speaking, this isn't true for all of them, but broadly speaking, they start relatively unknown. They achieve this huge success. They become super famous, and mostly it's 3 years, but sometimes, like Tom Baker, was 7. But, after a certain number of years, they are famous enough that they want to go off and do other things. But Ncuti Gatwa started that 2 years before he actually started filming his role. He was announced as the Doctor. It was this endless wait, and in that amount of time, the Barbie movie came out, and season 4 of Sex Education got a lot of well-deserved attention. And Ncuti Gatwa is just effortlessly charismatic and radiant. So anytime you point a camera at him, he just absolutely steals everything. And he was doing that for literally years before we saw even a minute of his Doctor on the screen. So by the time he actually was doing his job as the Doctor, he was already on the cusp of being too famous to be doing it.
And also structurally, this whole his whole existence almost was in Disney, the Disney period. So they thought that all Doctor Who needs is a whole bunch of money. Well, no, Doctor Who needs a really good writing staff, and I'm not sure they had some. And I will say this: they went from the big bad in season 1 being a long-term callback from Baker era.
That was a deep cut.
And then you go to the big bad for this. You get James O'Keefe, kind of Nick Shirley sort of character.
Yeah.
I just kind of wonder though if negative bloggers might actually have been the big bad for the for the series, because I don't like this one. What's his name? Capaldi was the last good doctor. It's like, what was different about the doctors that were? Okay. No, you're just an asshole. That's
it's sexism and racism. I see.
No. Well, I can actually agree that some of the writing, I mean, Jodie's stuff was uneven, but
uneven. But then you look at things like Demons of the Punjab, I think, is as good an episode as anything the show has ever done. It's amazing. And I was just talking about this in a review of something the other day. I would love for the show to have embraced the new incoming writers more. I know that Russell T. Davies' thing is that he does write the bulk of them, he plots it out, and, he co-wrote some of it. But, there were a lot of new writers in Jodie Whittaker's tenure that showed a lot of pride, and even before. Sarah Dollard, I think is her name, who wrote Face the Raven, which is, hands down one of the best episodes that the show has done ever.
Yeah, to put her and me out there just kind of floating around in case anyone should ever need is kind of a cool, I wish they'd come here and fix some things, but
I do wish that they had the courage to just let Clara be dead. They just couldn't bring themselves to do it.
And poor Mackie, they just can't let people be dead for realsies because it would hurt hearts.
That was true. I did love the character of Bill, though. Bill and Peter Capaldi's doctor together might be one of my favorite companion pairs of all time.
No, it's beautiful to see and I think when you if you qualify it with is done well or when it's done well, it's like no. I think that the show tends to stand on its own. I always like a little more science in my science fiction. I completely understood what they were doing with bringing folklore elements into this into the Disney seasons. I mean, I think it's stuff that they've always wanted to do, but they can't because you can't do fairies and goblins and those huge Muppet song and dance numbers. I absolutely loved.
Absolutely.
Had you heard? I thought I had heard that they were going to be starting up again.
The latest word is obviously they're in a bit of damage control mode right now. But they almost immediately came back and said, yep, there's going to be another Christmas special in 2026, because obviously they didn't have time to do one between Disney deciding to end their deal and Christmas this year, which is understandable. And, Doctor Who has had longer gaps than this in its history.
Absolutely. We could always anticipate, there's going to be another, maybe a TV movie in there at some point.
At some point. It's not going to be the great drought of 89 through 2005 again anytime soon.
And you wouldn't want to be Sylvester on McCoy, and that would, I killed it.
Yeah. I hope he never felt like that.
I don't believe so. I do love seeing him on interviews and specials and things. It's always goddamn the energy that boy brings.
So charming. Do you watch or do you have access to the collection Blu-ray sets at all?
Let me see. I feel like I have seen, because there's something that they posted, like a compilation of every Doctor, and I know I've seen all of those, but the actual series, I do not. No.
The actual season-long Blu-ray sets. I respect the fact that they're not doing them in chronological order because most of the first few years is missing, and the very first episode is its own entire other problem. Mm-hmm. So they, random season order, putting these out, and they've got this bonus feature on them called Behind the Sofa, where they show 2 or 3 different groups of actors from the show, or sometimes producers, or like Liz Sladen's daughter is a frequent guest on them because, of course, sadly she's passed.
Mm-hmm.
But for every single disc is a storyline, and one of the bonus features Behind the Sofa, they have all these actors gathered together watching the episode, and obviously they're watching a cut-down version of it, which is fine, totally understandable. But they're just so charming and so gracious, and like all of them could not be more clearly proud to have been part of this. It is what keeps me buying the Blu-ray season-long box sets, is just so that I can watch these people watch the show.
That actually sounds like it would be a lot of fun. And also like a view of it that we didn't have the first time around. So there is genuinely something new, that's added. I love that kind of energy. It's fun. Yeah,
I just like seeing that they, for the most part, seem to be actual, really good, gracious, nice people. But so many of the people that we've looked up to have turned out to not be awesome. Just getting a taste of that is so appreciated.
Well, it just feels like they've cast the right people for these things. Or that if you play the Doctor, part of your soul opens up, or you're just going to understand, be a decent human being, or at least present as one. I mean, goodness, anything can happen to anybody, but it's kind of, what I loved, right at the beginning of the COVID shutdown, when Jodie addressed the children, Doctor Who's children's audience as the Doctor. And it was so beautiful.
From her closet.
And it was just like, oh my God, everything is just, it is very scary right now. Completely, and we're trying to do something, but you're all being so brave. And it's oh my God, that is just exactly what you do with that energy.
Good. Yeah. That was very sweet. Yeah, I really liked Jodie as the Doctor. I'm not blind to some of the writing issues that were going on at the time, but there were some really great stories during her tenure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, goodness, okay. I turn on my television. Where else am I seeing, contemporary accounts or depictions of Rosa Parks?
Right.
Or Dr. King. I mean, where else is that happening? People can complain about it. Oh, it's so well. Oh, it's so terrible. It's like, where else this is contemporary history that people don't necessarily have.
I'm not going to do the math when the episode aired, so I'm just going to round and say, I'm a man who is on or about 50 years old, and I had literally never heard of the partition of India.
Yeah.
The American school system does not mention that at all.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't need to be instructional or deliberate, but I mean, if it's telling a story that can elucidate human history in ways that God, where else are you getting that? I mean, pop culture, just where?
Yeah, same with Ada Lovelace. I had never heard of her before that episode, and I actually had to go down and track down a biography of her because I got fascinated, and she is a legitimately fascinating person.
Yeah. I think. Well, if I'm my lineage is correct, we're getting the whole Wollstonecraft where the Doctor has mined that that family, but I mean there was stuff going on, so
They certainly had plenty of stories to talk to about. Which reminds me, we started to talk about earlier about the Ncuti Gatwa era and the Disney era taking a turn into more of the kind of magical realm as opposed to strict sci-fi. And I think that's interesting. I think it was worth exploring. I think it would have worked better if Ncuti Gatwa hadn't had so many other commitments that kept him from being in as much of the stories as we would like him to be for that first year. Because, he was still shooting Sex Education at that point, and I think that led to a lack of focus that led to them not really being able to dive into the magical stuff as much as they could have.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I think it does. And like, if you're okay, I'm the doctor, so I'm going to like look at what past doctors have done, and then like as I'm walking onto set, we're going to be completely different universe where magic is real, and you're in the Mavityverse now. Enjoy.
Yeah. Okay. There's a few things about that last season that do frustrate me. It drives me crazy that the whole Mavity thing never went anywhere.
Yeah.
And I just need to know, was it always just a running joke, or were they building to something? Like Carol Ann Ford. Clearly bringing back Susan Carol Ann Ford for those last bits was supposed to be building to something, because she's, I believe, 84, 85. You don't just tease something that you're going to do a few years later on when your actress is 84, 85. You just don't do that. And I've got to read that as whatever the plan was with Susan got taken out with what was clearly a big reshift of Ncuti leaving at the end of that season instead of just resolving the plot line of the season and setting up the next one.
Yeah.
It was great seeing
Well, if we were in our fifth season of the Disneyverse, we might have there might have, but then it's not making money hand over fist the way we assumed it was going to, and it's like, well, it's always been Doctor Who. It's always been like BBC is kind of public television. I mean, what were your oh help! It's a low budget monster. It's a cardboard box we found in the alleyway. What do you...
That's how Doctor Who works. You spend no money on it, and you make a ridiculous amount back on books and toys and TV shows and T-shirts and all the ancillary stuff. But, yeah.
I mean, I loved everyone that they managed to bring. It was fun seeing Mel. It was fun seeing Lethbridge Stewart, Kate. I loved all of the draws from the originals that they tried to bring in, even if the concept was that they had changed it, that like from the Big Bang, the formless ones are real, and one of the first things we're going to do is the toy maker. We're going to bring back the toy maker. He's going to have different and more terrifying powers than he's ever had. And it's like, I love that you guys have created this new universe. But then you have to deal with all of the nitpickers who've been watching this since 1963 and have been like, oh my god, can you guys not understand that the reason the specials had to be done the way that they were was so that they could introduce all of the things that Disney, they probably worked on this. This is going to be a completely new project, and it's going to be, so here's how we're going to do that. Oh, I just don't like him.
Yeah.
Oh, those weren't the Beatles. It was like those were the Beatles in a universe that hadn't had music for 60 years. What do you imagine they would be?
A couple things there. First of all, I don't think it gets said nearly often enough how much better the show treated Mel in this version than it treated her back in the 80s. Like, she was a legitimate character. She was interesting. They couldn't have demonstrated more clearly that the problem was never Bonnie Langford with that character, because she was fantastic. Also want to say that bringing back the Ronnie and then not really having anything to do with her is the most classic usage of the Ronnie that they could possibly have done, because that's always what they did.
Really, it's just, goddamn, it's just been so much fun to just kick back and talk to you for a while.
Absolutely, you too.
I miss Angel. I miss being able to just deep dive on stuff. And
I know.
It's fun. I was really glad that we were able to get into some of these, because I'm not really watching anything anymore right now, because what I'm really, well, all I'm doing is just going through my discs, and maybe I'm watching movies that I never actually got around to watching that one, so I'm like pulling up like some streaming. But it's like there's really, I don't even know what's happening on network television anymore. I don't know what's happening really on cable productions. Like if TNT had a series going on, I think the most recent thing I ever actually watched was like Peacemaker, and he's fine. I mean, it's funny, balls out, James Gunn. Yeah, I mean, good Lord, but I wouldn't sit down and write 30 paragraphs about a Peacemaker episode.
I can't imagine that I would, either than repeating the jokes that I thought were funny.
But yeah, it's kind of neat to just be able to like, okay, well, we can talk about this stuff because this stuff is fun. Thank you so much for all of this. I just really feel like it's been fun to just kick back and talk about some stuff, and I really appreciate you. Mikey Heinrich, everyone, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mikey Heinrich, everyone. You can check him out. Links to a few of his contributions in my show notes, including YouTube channel, Doux Review, and blog 42nd Visual. Initially, I was going to post our conversation to mark the 9th anniversary of VideoFuzzy. Woohoo! As of next month, June of 2026, I will have posted 9 years of VideoFuzzy. Real talk, there's tentatively some stuff in the works for episode 110. I already know it's going to run late, so I'll wish you a happy Pride Month in advance. Be seen, live your truth, be the light you want to see in the world, and heck, any chance I have to talk to my friends about shows we love is already plenty celebration enough. So let's consider the 9th anniversary of VideoFuzzy well and truly launched. As for any disgruntled listeners who are mostly here to listen to me talk about Luther, I'll be getting to that. Right now. And now, VideoFuzzy presents Fuzzy Feature. We open on haunted eyes, searching, frantic. This otherwise nondescript figure dashed madly through the abandoned factory works, panicked, his pursuer dogged hard on his heels. The cold open beds his tension keenly. Clearly terrified prey clambers up 3 flights of stairs to hide, to escape. But his shrewd, determined trackers anticipated this move. It cuts him off at the other end of the catwalk. We see it rock from below, so precarious. Desperately, the man reaches, finds an iron bar, defending in attack mode. He swings, but his world collapses in the disrepair of the rickety support fails. He drops through the hole in the catwalk, oblivion fent off solely by what grip he can manage the ragged, jagged edge as his pursuer, tall, solidly built detective inspector, looms above him, taunting him. Henry! That's Anton Valencia, then Saunders as child abductor Henry Madsen. Henry! You're going to fall! His leverage intensified. His demands are the same. Where's the girl? Where's the missing girl, Henry? Phones out, number dialed. Constables on the scene at Henry's home, poised to pounce where he's hidden her. Clamped to the catwalk, straining fingers fight gravity from the center of the planet. God, can't hold on. Help is a confession away. Oh, gods. Behind the media center! At the scene, the team leap into action, tear to the wall behind the cabinetry, as yet no help is forthcoming. You may be lying, Henry! The officers claw the recess and drag the storage container hidden on the wall like a safe. Prise open the cover. The girl is wrapped in plastic. Predatory eyes narrow as her condition. Oh, God! Her condition is assessed, and a terrifying moment passes before she grasps a breath of air. She's alive! She's gonna be okay! A swing in space. Henry's eyes beg, entreat assistant. Help me. Oh, God, help! What of the others, Henry? The others! He names 3 children. One he held cold in his arms, lost. He names Adrian, Gabriella, Emma. He growls, little Emma. He dug her from the ground himself. But it was too late. How many more? Too long a slip. Too late. The now with this confessed criminal's grip fails him. His body forfeit the dread inexoration of gravity. Falling. Tri-level smack to the hard and concrete broken floor below. And perched above, pitiless eyes assert coldness justice into the opening sequence. Massive attack sings the spare and haunting strains of Paradise Circus along red backdrops etched with watercolor animations of forensic discovery, resolving to a dread silhouette's green right, staring away from us, lost in the labyrinthine dungeon of his own dark, impossibly deep thoughts, as the title names him. Luther. As I mentioned up there, Disc 2014, I found the series premiere of Luther as aired on BBC America. It premiered in 2010. The show, which ran for 5 seasons through 2019, was based on the work of Neil Cross. Idris Elba inhabits John Luther, a deeply intelligent, passionate, conflicted detective inspector through his twisted cases and troubled home life. 2 things happen. We discover, as the title card informs us, we are now 7 months later. This cold open were insufficient indication. This series is dark. The discoveries are grim, and I hardly know how to tell you except just tell you there's no avoiding mention of animal cruelty in discussing this episode. This, by the way, is more warning than we received as viewers, but it sets the stage. Luther is not going to be a nice, cozy little murder mystery, and we are put on notice straight out the gate. So, as I said, 7 months later, a shooting is called in from residents in a quiet neighborhood. It appears an elder couple has been killed in their home, called in by their grown daughter, Ruth Wilson, as Alice Morgan. She's popped around from the shops for her Daux's birthday, where he's found shot through and collapsed at the breakfast table. Their dog, the family dog, lying at his feet, also shot, it would appear, multiple times. And the man's wife, her mum, Alice's mum, upstairs in her bed, also shot. As Alice phones in her discovery, she slides down the wall, collapsed in horror. The scene cuts to Luther back at the warehouse up the catwalk, deep in thought, a retreat for him of sorts, for, in rather more senses, separation from Zoe, his wife, played by Indira Varma. From a side passage, although an abandoned space like that all sounds reverberates, Saskia Reeves, as super DSU Rose Teller, finds him. She informs him that due to the extraordinary circumstances of the case, internal review has cleared him of wrongdoing. No disciplinary action for the fall and subsequent coma of a suspect he was interrogating, and he's free to return if he so chooses. There's an edge of warning in her voice as she details the conditions of such resumption of duties. To wit, don't get yourself in a situation like this again, which means observing all backup protocols. Plus, any more of his proactive strategies need to be signed off by her. If she doesn't sign, they don't happen. She asks him about Zoe. Luther said they'd had a trial separation. He tried it. He didn't like it. Rose asked what Zoe thought about that. Luther says he did everything she asked, but feels like he's also on a probationary status with her as well. Rose says that's the difference between them. Zoe talks about bringing him back. Rose actually does so. Out on the street, Rose introduces Luther to Warren Brown as DS Justin Ripley, who, well, this is by way of introduction, tells Luther he'd lobbied to be stationed with him. Put in the request 9 months ago, he said, 2 months prior to Henry Madsen's fall. Followed up in writing 3 times a week since. The look Luther gives DS Justin Ripley is suspicious. This is clearly the first time Luther's been made aware of this person. Also, before they get in the car, there's a shot of Luther, Justin, and Rose, where Luther is clearly the tallest, most male police officer in all of Europe. I get that as Idris Elba, but he photographs so beautifully. You can check out the shot on VideoFuzzy's Instagram page. Ripley brings him up to speed on the home invasion I mentioned up. Their daughter's physicist at university. It's there for her father's birthday. Wife found upstairs, shot through the head. Dog shot 4 times. Sheer brutality. We'd already seen the father dead at the table. Alice is frantically calling it in, having just arrived from the shops moments before. Initial investigation found no burglary, no attempt to stage the scene, no sexual assault. The shooter knows layout, eliminates threat, gets the dog, and then gets Douglas. Grainy pick out of focus behind Luther's shoulder, the happy family with Alice smiling maniacally. No trace of the weapon. Neither Luther nor Ripley think the scene feels right. Back at the station, Luther breaks off, calls Zoe. She's at her law office, heading towards reception, but the Board of Inquiry finding in his favor. He's back at work. There's a great deal of joy and relief on Luther's part, and a great deal of tension on Zoe's part, though she's happy for him and agrees to meet with him later after dinner, ringing off since she's on her way to a meeting. Luther has a brief interaction on his way to his desk with former partner, DCI Ian Reed, so they welcome me back with a weird one, he said. Zoe heads back to her office, encountering Paul McGann. That's 8th Doctor Paul McGann, as Mark North, who Zoe has clearly long time befriended. Mark wants to know if Luther's been told yet about him. All this sneaking around is mad, he said. You've been separated for months. Well, Zoe is not told him yet. Interrogation chamber, Luther confronts Alice re the home invasion and double homicide, tells her it was a singular crime, no apparent motive, and crimes like these have motives. Meanwhile, Matthew Marsh as DCSU Russell Cornish confronts DSU Rose Teller in her office about Luther being back. Rose defends him. Cornish says the credibility of the whole division rests on Luther's behavior, which seems unlikely, but oh well. Luther discusses Alice with Supervisor Rose Teller and new partner Justin Ripley and concludes that Alice is a psychopath. I don't want to. I really do not want to. I'm certain he was reading all kinds of micro-expressions and processing all manner of ephemera from the crime scene, turning it all over and over in the subconscious. Okay, fine. He yawns while he's in the interview with her, and she doesn't yawn. Despite earlier commenting that she's ever so tired, despite yawning itself being a sympathetic response, humans. She didn't yawn, Luther said. Ergo, she's a psychopath, a malignant narcissist who killed her parents. I swear to God, that's the A to B to C extrapolation he uses here. I'm just saying Kira Sedgwick has been doing this sort of thing at Closer for 5 seasons at this point, not even, but especially not in a pilot episode would she remotely consider hanging a case on such a flimsy... A neighbor hated the trim of the garden, knew where the back door key was, shot everyone, took the gun with them when they left. Desperate housewives level motivations. Master criminal psycho Alice didn't yawn when he yawned. I love you, Luther, but... Justin points out that she didn't try to stage the scene to make the burglary angle seem more plausible. Luther asserts she doesn't care about alibi. She's proud of what she's done, couldn't bear someone else taking the credit. Rose points out there's no proof, and Luther points out that the absence is the point. There's not enough time. There's not enough anything. Just Alice sitting in the interview room. Thing is, though, despite him having to be improbably intuitive, Luther's absolutely right. Alice Morgan is a psychopath who killed her parents. He stipulates that she's a child prodigy, Oxford at 13, brings up Occam's razor. The simplest solution is generally the right one. Points out the simplest solution in this case is that she did it. He points out there's no evidence of an intruder. Oh, their exchange invests her and him here. Alice finds him fascinating. She points out the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. She affirms her parents made her free, and she did hate them, but asserts she did not kill them. Luther hops in. Can you prove that? She says he can't prove a negative. Can't be done. He says innocence isn't negative, it's absence of guilt. And again, she challenges him to prove it. The burden of proof is entirely yours, she says, and this exchange is delicious plum pudding. If you think I did this, then you need to demonstrate how and why. I won't be able to do that, will I? He asks. You can certainly try, she replies, because there is nothing. You don't interact with the things we know in the way that we expect. He said, an insightful callback to her work with dark matter. Your present, your actions can only be inferred by a certain absence. Is that a compliment? She asks. Absolutely, he said. Are you trying to beguile me? I wonder if they tried this scene with him inches from her face. When they counter them directly, they are opposite extremes of the screen, and it feels like a mistake for the parry thrust of this dialogue. The better matchup, again, you can see it on VideoFuzzy's Instagram page. He replies, I wouldn't be so foolish, but I'll tell you this, Alice. You can revel in your brilliance for as long as you like, but people slip up. Happens time and time again. She counters, that's just faulty logic postulate and imperfect data collection. She suggests everyone slips up, only works since the only criminals they catch are the ones who make mistakes, which in turn skews the data set. He agrees, but criminals aren't as smart as they think they are, to which she purrs, oh, that must get monotonous for someone as brilliant as you. Now, how interesting is Alice? Back in conference, Luther demands they hold her. Rose asks, how? On what? Being a space oddity. On she did it, he barks, with no real motive. She hated her parents, he asserts, to which Rose counters, seriously, who doesn't? They've got no forensics, no witnesses, bad timeline. Give me something of substance, she concludes. Find me the gun, put it in her hand. Until then, cut her loose and send her home. Later, Luther drives to Zoe's. Zoe's all dressed up, having just come from dinner. She's rejecting physical intimacy such as kisses or hugs. She tells him she knows what he's come there to discuss, but before he says anything, we must tell him that she's met someone. This was a 2x4. Idris Elba is an astonishing actor and presents gobsmacked beautifully. He's internalizing entire novels, asking when, a while ago, who. Doesn't matter. Are you sleeping with him? No response. Although when we met Mark, he was pretty comfortable. Luther had believed he was at the end of separation, and Zoe is not at all in a reconciling space. Indira Varma is also an astonishing actor and found this voice perfectly. I feel like this is the conversation we'd experience had Stockard Channing and Martin Sheen been estranged at the beginning of The West Wing. She's had a lot less time than Idris to project that level of personal charisma. Before, we just had them on the phone together. In person, they flash fire. Anyway, Luther takes her lack of response as a response and wrecks a door in her home with his bare hands, right off its hinges. First, picking up a candlestick to maybe throw its sides against that, sets it right back down before addressing his rage at the door. He's sobbing, why? Why? He's been absolved at work. He's done everything she demanded of him. And obviously he's got volumes of rage issues. The door is no longer available for comment. But even for a detective who's had 7 months of downtime, who can determine someone's guilt or innocence of murder from parasympathetic responses, this is coming out of nowhere for him. He felt the reinstatement, the board's exoneration of him, a grievous injury plummeting and sustained coma. Henry's coma we observed in the cold open, which, side note, might not even be accurate. The man came at him with an iron pipe, fell through a hole in the catwalk before dropping 3 stories. Luther demanded on presumed condition of help that Henry tell him where his latest victim was, information that was not forthcoming otherwise. Once he ascertained that she was in police care, rather than reach for him, Luther pushed his advantage, pressed his inquiry to other child victims from this, as I pointed out before, now confessed child abductor, and Henry, who'd put himself in the situation in the first place, lost his grip. There's no indication Luther physically harmed him, simply didn't help him, which, if they'd had backup, his team could have placed a catch pad, but as it was, no reason to believe if Luther had reached for him, he wouldn't have fallen in the attempt. But he clearly felt the reinstatement was the final barrier to his reconciliation with Zoe, and she'd clearly spent that time apart developing feelings for the 8th Doctor. She tells him to go home. He says, "This is my home." She says, "No," wiping tears from her eyes as he leaves without another word. At a bar, he removes his wedding band. DCI Ian Reed comes in, tells him Zoe called, asks him to check on Luther. Meanwhile, Alice punches John Luther into a search engine, finds news items, again with the crazy headlines TV comes up with, "John Luther arrests serial killer." She makes a note of Henry's status as potentially permanent coma patient. She cross-references census info to find Zoe and where she works as a humanitarian lawyer. Luther approaches Alice from the perspective that she's a narcissist, forever seeking praise. How would someone like that hide the most perfect thing she'd ever done? This conversation is intercut with scenes of the family dog being cremated. Well, he asserts, Alice Morgan sees the world is full of people who have offended her and let her down, and those people need punishing. She's already gotten away with it once. No one will stop her unless Luther does. He knows he's going to need to make her slip up. Alice meets with Luther with the cremains of her dog, which Luther says is protocol. She asserts pets are buried. The cremation is somewhat pitiless. Luther asserts it was pitiless to shoot the dog in the first place. She invites him in and asks if they're being listened to. He asks would it make a difference. She shows him a picture of a black hole, something that takes you in and crushes you into nothing. "I like to talk about nothing," he quips. "It's the only thing I know anything about." "Don't you believe in evil?" "I have. I've seen it." "Ah, Henry Madsen." Henry and others like him. Me? Conceivably. She raises the question of his marriage, pointing out his wedding band is missing. She asks if there's someone else. Not here to discuss that, Alice. Is he handsome? Feel like that sort of thing, I guess. Are you in pain? You don't understand, love, Alice. It's not your fault. I mean, you can mimic it. I guess you can recognize it in other people, but you'll never be able to understand love. He's inches away from her. She parts her lips provocatively. Did you come here for sex? He moves in as if to kiss her, and at the last moment says, no. She turns away. You'd be surprised how many men do. Do you think they have any idea how fatuous they look? Some of us are afraid of that, yes. Then why? Why did I come here? Because I wanted to tell you I know you kept the gun, and sooner or later I'll find it. Why would I do that? You just couldn't help yourself. Wouldn't it make things easy for you if that were true? There isn't a gun to find. Keeping that gun wasn't a rational decision, he said. It's a compulsion. You did it because you needed to do it. It's that compulsion that makes you weak in ways that you can't see or understand. It's that compulsion that's going to get you caught and will bring you down just like clockwork. Are you threatening me? I wouldn't. And why is that? Oh, come now, really, because I'll be hurt and angry. I wonder, why did your wife turn her face from you, John? Why would she do that? Is it because you shine so bright? He steps away. I'm coming for you. Not if I come for you first. Luther goes to Zoe's office and confronts her about her new beau. He is a bull in a china shop, storms into her office mid-meeting, tells everyone to get out. They have it out about her new beau and what she wants from him. Essentially, she says what she's getting from Mark is his presence. Even before the incident, so much of Luther, John, was absorbed in his work, in the missing children, in the hunt, in Henry. You care more about the dead than the living, she says. That's where your heart is. He asks if she loves Mark, and she says yes. And me? She says always. But not like that, not anymore. I know it's a cruel thing to hear, she says, but you'll need to accept it, John. If you love me, you need to accept it. The camera is right on his face through this whole passage, and we are watching the creation of this character. I don't know how to do that, he breathes. What follows is security dismissing him from the office, and oh, wow, the small children these guards appear compared to John Big Dick Luther. He asserts he's a policeman, that's all he is, and storms out ahead of them, pointless in his wake. Zoe's unnerved, goes out on the balcony for a smoke, and yoink! Alice grabs her, holds a hat pin to her neck, and tells to her a tale. And thank God for closed captioning, because the music here is strenuously overmixed. She says Luther assaulted her, touched her intimately, and while he did so, he told Alice about Zoe, that she was dead, that a man had abducted her, kept her alive for days, burned her alive, used knives and a blowtorch, kept pieces of her as souvenirs. I'm worried that someone might want to hurt you like that. Wild, since that's a tale she crafted out of whole cloth. I think she needn't worry, unless she's talking about herself, warning Zoe not to turn around as she flits off into the ether. We come back. Luther's on the phone in his office. Presumably Zoe is recounting the tale of this mad encounter. Flips the desk over and confronts his boss. Honestly, Gub, you should have just held her, he says. You didn't give me enough to hold her. Rose fires back. And he can't prove it was her this afternoon. Zoe didn't see her face. There's no CCTV, no eyewitnesses, no nothing. You do know this makes me Alice Morgan's next project, he says. I questioned her brilliance, offended her. Do you know what she can do? To me? To Zoe? I know what you say she can do, Rose says. I also know we can't prove what she already did, and you can't detain people on suspicion of crimes yet to be committed. So what do I do to stop her, he demands. And Rose says, bring her in the right way. Ballistics analyst brings in a firearm consistent with all the bullets at the scene. Lightweight, polymer, plastic, he considers. which melts. That is, at the scene, each parent was shot once. The dog was shot 4 times. He suggests to disguise the extent of the damage. Having done this, he says Alice could shove the disassembled gun down the dog's throat and it would be burned to ash when the dog was cremated, per department policy. New problem. The gun might well be in the cremains returned to Alice, Rose says, but there's no connection, no proof she ever touched the thing. Get the gun, Rose said, put it in her hands. Luther says Alice doesn't leave evidence. She leaves evidence-shaped absence. Luther points out Alice has now threatened his life, threatened Zoe's life, and we can't touch her. Come on! Rose tells him to find another angle. There are no other angles. He says, she left us nothing. To which Rose challenges, what do you need to prove more? That Alice Morgan's guilty, or that you're right? Well, he's already convinced of her guilt, so the two objectives are confluence. Luther jimmies the lock at Alice's place, steals the urn, and sifts the ash. He finds he was right. The metal components are still in there. The gun was indeed in the dog. She kept it because, as he rightly concluded, she needed to. She needed the proof of her cleverness. She returns home not too long later. He calls out, shows her he's got the urn, and hops in the elevator she just ascended. She grabs a kitchen knife and gives chase. She points out what we already know. The urn in Luther's hand is useless as evidence against her. He counters it's not evidence. It's what she needs to remind herself of who she really is. That's why you followed me. I know you. I see you. And you think that I'm that weak, she says. Then you don't know me at all. All right, he says, before tossing the urn in the Thames, grabbing her arm and leading her over the railing. Stay away from Zoe. Is this what you did to Henry Madsen? She sneers. So go on. Kiss me. Kill me. Do something. Luther shakes this off. Here's what's going to happen, he says. You're going to stay away from Zoe, or I'll arrest someone for the murder of your parents, and by the time he's found guilty, you'll have been forgotten about. There'll be no enigma with Alice Morgan at the heart of it. No one will wonder how you did it. No one will think how clever you were. I'll just plant the evidence. I don't need the gun. With that, he tosses some bits of evidence at her feet, but not, most notably, the metallic firing pin we saw had emerged intact from the dog's cremation. Luther goes to Zoe's and gets into a row with Mark, who shoves him away and punches him. Luther lays him out on the hood of his own car. Zoe comes out and he tells her he understands she is where she needs to be. He accepts and respects that. I mean, all of this present suggests otherwise, but he apologizes. She says, don't apologize. She says, I'm sorry. She's crying. They're hugging. They're crying together before he lets the constables drive him away. As he's going, he rings Alice. You may be very, very clever, but you're wrong, he says. There is love in the world, so you lose. Alice, we discover, had been going in to probably murder Henry Madsen, but she walks off. Honestly, I have no idea how she thought she'd get away with it, but you'll never win money betting against her brazenness. Or, staying with British television for the moment, as Mr. Harmon said to Mrs. Slocum once on Are You Being Served, I'm glad I haven't got your nerve in my tooth. The look at the season ahead teases multiple serial criminals and further run-ins with Alice. She ends up being principal foil to Luther throughout the series, a sometimes helpful anti-hero, his Flambeau, Professor Moriarty, his Irene Adler across 5 seasons. I remember this show giving me lots of feels. I do think they got the show off to a great start. I mean, even with their having deleted the scene that probably introduced him, I think we saw John's former partner, Ian Reid, Stephen McIntosh's DCID Ian Reid, way more than we saw new partner Justin Ripley. But they didn't really care if I knew who everyone was, so long as I was always deeply impressed with who Luther was. And, oh, absolutely. While this is the pilot episode, I've certainly encountered Luther before, talked about him and Alice in some detail back in episodes 49 and 50. The source work is haunting and harrowing. Some of the worst crimes imaginable are portrayed against children and vulnerable populations. Kinda makes you wish when you learn about credible evidence of it, you'd see a few perpetrators hauled in front of judges and juries, but universe we're in, right? Probably there's 8,000 or 9,000 fresh new Charles Dickenses and Margaret Atwoods and Upton Sinclairs and George Orwells out there, hard at work recording TikToks I'll never see and podcasts I'll never hear and writing threads posts no one will ever look at because of audience suppression, but at least we can all still read Heather Cox Richardson and Jay Quo for now. Luther is a dark profiler, and I've expressed some irritation with these kinds of shows because, for one thing, the same writers crafting the criminals or the crimes are crafting the resolution, and the investigator will find out exactly what they need to know in the manner that they need to know it when exactly the right number of cars have been sold and the right amount of dramatic and sexual tension have been established. Season 5 featured a serial assaulting couple who hid victims in their basement, and when Luther was closing in on them, a male of the pair just went on a damn spree, arranging the bodies of his victims in audacious public displays. No way he'd manage it without someone seeing what he's up to and stopping him, which is what I'm referring to when I call this stuff crime porn. It's outrageous and improbable, but highlights the supervillain qualities of the perpetrator to emphasize the superhuman abilities of the investigatory team. Luther gets a bit of a pass because, well, for one thing, it's Idris Elba, who is simply astonishing. Also, the tension is sustained throughout the series by Alice Morgan's recurring involvement. Having a singular series arc foil gives the writers a credible means of interrupting the main sequence storyline with side plot development that, however tangential, never seems entirely irrelevant. That, and for all the series ran 5 seasons across 9 years, it's only 20 episodes altogether. The writers clearly prioritized quality over quantity, and we watched some deeply written, atmospheric crime drama. Profiler ran 82 episodes over 4 seasons. Criminal Minds ran, or rather has run, 365 episodes across 2 decades and 18 seasons with at least 2 spin-offs, Suspect Behavior and Beyond Borders. More than 400 episodes altogether, which clearly wasn't enough because they're apparently premiering season 19 at the end of this month. Can't really recommend it in comparison. Oh right, BBC's Wire in the Blood, that was 31 episodes over 6 seasons from 2002 to 2008. And be fair, I've only seen a couple episodes, but the thing just got silly sometimes. Both the serial crimes and the secret societies investigated, but all the magical psychological intuition displayed by investigators. While also guilty of excesses, as alluded to up there, I'd argue Luther has stronger storytelling than any of these. Serial criminals as supervillains worthy of this British Batman, which parallel, I suppose, casts Alice as Catwoman. His own psychology is a mangled mess of loss, rage paved under a veneer of I'm fine, the rest of ever-present violence simmering just below the surface presented as an indication of how deeply he feels this emotional pain, rather than hampering the storytelling with any real interest in controlling it. I look forward not only to encountering more of these episodes, but also sitting with it post this cataloging effort, filling in any missing gaps in my collection, and basking in the storytelling, this character study in 20 parts that the series represents. Beautiful work, everyone.
I associate many things with many things.
Cross connection. There's a couple obvious places to start looking for connections with the feature, this time for mystical centers in my media collection, these being Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, 6 Feet Under, Joss Whedon Productions, and Ryan Murphy Productions, or Studio Whedon Productions, Murphy Swamp. Idris Elba, the most direct connection I've got is his appearance in The Office with Ruth Wilson from 6 Feet Under. He's been in lots of animated things, video game things, comic book, Marvel things, 3,000 Years of Longing with Tilda Swinton. He was in something called Obsessed with Beyonce, played the president in House of Dynamite, and was in Heads of State with Stephen Root of Oh, wow, yes. Absolutely, for freak's sake, finally. Golden thread. About friggin' time. Stephen Root is absolutely a golden thread in this collection. There's a few this time, but I'm finally tracing him. I'm showing Stephen Root all the way back in his first IMDb credit in Crocodile Dundee 2. He's in V.I. Warshawski, Star Trek The Next Generation, Night Court, Murphy Brown, Dave, Sirens, Sybil, Seinfeld, Just Shoot Me, and Frasier, and moving into where he's more likely to be in this collection. He was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, a Joss Whedon connection there. He was Jimmy James in News Radio. He was in Profiler, Mike Judge Project, Office Space, Idiocracy, and Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. Still need to track that one down. He's in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And staying with the Coen Brothers for a second, he was in No Country for Old Men, as well as a couple of first season episodes of the Noah Hawley iteration production of Fargo. He was in Aaron Sorkin's The West Wing. He was in Boston Legal, Pushing Daisies. He was in Alan Ball's True Blood. He was in The Men Who Stare at Goats, had him at 24, Raising Hope, Fringe. He was in Justified, The Big Bang Theory, Get Out, BoJack Horseman, Wee Baby Bears, Bob's Burgers, and he played the porter in the Apple TV production of The Tragedy of Macbeth. Stephen Root is a solid character actor, talented, edgy, capable of making you believe impossible things with a resolute eye and a taut twang never too far away from his delivery. He also has dangerously sharp comic instinct. I've certainly talked about his work before in episodes 35, 56, episode 60, where I first floated adding him as a golden thread, episode 93, 100, 101, and 103. I love his strength. I love that he's all over my collection. A solid presence for sure. Another solid character introduction in the pilot episode was Ruth Wilson as Alice Morgan. Stopping to highlight a couple aspects of this character I couldn't really find space for in the episode discussion, but in much the same way as it's difficult to imagine this show as having the impact it would were Idris Elba not cast as the lead, it's hard to see anyone else as this simmering flame opposite. The instincts for look, tone, and style were on point. A character whose very name evokes the ancient and ineffable mysteries of both Wonderland and Camelot, itself woven into an image Jay targeted in Men in Black, his earliest firearms training, the subtle child prodigy, 12-year-old girl in the shooting gallery holding a book on quantum physics. Alice Morgan had been studying astrophysics at Oxford at the age of 13, and in her not-so-complicated The Piercing Psychology of John Luther could figure it out from her parasympathetic failure to yawn. I'm never going to be okay with that, but not so complicated murder of her parents and hiding the murder weapon, a polymer-based handgun, inside of their family pet so that it would by standard crime scene protocols be incinerated, makes her in equal measure both cunning and heartless. This is a dark, twisted creation whose portrayal by Ruth Wilson is outstanding. Wilson, for her part, isn't quite as strong a presence in my collection, but I've absolutely highlighted her. Beyond Luther, Wilson appeared as number 313 in the AMC reboot of The Prisoner in 2009. I've never seen it, but at this moment wonder if coincidence. I'm reading Charlotte Bronte's 1847 work Jane Eyre, which according to IMDb was her debut performance as title character in 2006, and she was in the 2013 productions of The Lone Ranger and Saving Mr. Banks, both of which I saw in theater with my now husband, and the latter of which also starred Bradley Whitford in my mystically central Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, so basically one step removed there. She played Georgiana Barrow in the 2007 episode of the Agatha Christie adaptation Marple, titled Nemesis, and she was in the Christie-themed 2022 production of See How They Run. Oh, I think I archived a little bit of this. Wilson was in the 2019 production of His Dark Materials with James McAvoy, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Joe Tanberg as Great Big Awesome CGI Polar Bear. Side note, I thought this was the Daniel Craig version of Philip Pullman's trilogy, but he actually appeared in 2007's The Golden Compass with, you might have heard of them, Nicole Kidman, Ian McShane, Kathy Bates, Sam Elliott, and in this one, Sir Ian McKellen voiced the polar bear Jorg Bjornsson. Grr. In other cross-connections, speaking of James Bond, I hadn't realized that was Colin Salmon and the increasingly poor decisions of Todd Margaret. He was never cast as the British super spy 00 Hubba Hubba, but he did appear in Pierce Brosnan Bond's Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day. Oh, and I never twigged he played Dr. Moon in Doctor Who, so another significant franchise connection there. I spied David Alan Grier in a 6th-season episode of Bones that turned up in this cataloging effort. Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger himself, showed up in a 4th-season nightmare-centered episode of Chuck. Ken Jenkins debuted as Courtney Cox's dad in the 2nd-season episode of Cougar Town. Not what the show is. And an episode of courtroom drama The Whole Truth gave us Rob Morrow of Numbers and Maura Tierney of News Radio, along with Tai Ma of the CW production Kung Fu and long-acknowledged Golden Thread Patrick Fischler. Speaking of Golden Threads, one I felt I was too quick to designate as such, Todd Stashwick, appeared in a writing-centric episode of Stuff My Dad Says, which explores the premise for the entire show. Show creator Justin Halpern Avatar, Henry Goodson, played by Jonathan Stowski, is in his editor's office. Stashwick plays his editor. When William Shatner is the titular dad of the piece, calls him just then and says hilarious, outrageous things, and Stashwick thinks people will be interested in this, assigns him to write it all down, and, I guess, turned it into an article. We know it becomes a Twitter feed, so this is probably an origin story. Of the two, I prefer playwright, political analyst, and author Jay Quo's Ma in all caps, and the single season that Seth stuff my dad says, God, suggests I'm not alone. Closing with a few Grey's Anatomy observations, I saw the debut of Katerina Scorsoni's character in 7th season episode of Grey's Anatomy, while the next one along featured a constellation of guest stars, including 6 Feet Under matriarch Frances Conroy, Diane Farr of Rescue Me, and already mentioned numbers up there, Golden Thread Kristen Clemenson, and, well, let's make it official, newly minted Golden Thread John Curry. Golden Thread. Solid presence. John Curry's IMDb credits stretch back to the mid-1990s. Stuff I'd have seen him in. He was in Frasier, Alias, and The Practice. Shows more likely in my collection: Arrested Development, Numbers, and Trust Me. He was in Avatar, Castle. I've mentioned the Grey's Anatomy appearance. He was in Desperate Housewives, Bones, Archer, and probably I stopped recording by then, but Rizzoli and Isles. And just to note the direct mystical centrality, I'm showing him in Ryan Murphy's 911 with Peter Krause, again from Alan Ball's 6 Feet Under. And while we're Grey's Anatomy adjacent with his appearance in that 7th season episode, now on VideoFuzzy, a fond reflection. Eric Dane passed on. McSteamy appeared in 145 episodes of Grey's Anatomy across 15 years, and apparently tough to work with both on and off set from what accounts have been posted. When he died earlier this year, most of his fellow actors honored his memory. One called him a bully, narcissistic and evil, and Dax Shepard, Mr. Kristen Bell, reportedly disliked him in the recovery program they undertook, which feelings apparently warmed over time. I'm posting this as acknowledgement of the work he did on Grey's Anatomy. I know that show will write people off with a post-it note, and if he did anything too disruptive, it feels like showrunner Shonda Rhimes would address it. Dr. Mark Sloan, his character, was actively objectified, participated enthusiastically, received humiliating injuries at the hand of Kyler Lee's Lexi Gray, but whatever was going on behind the scenes, they honored his contract for years. His analog specialty of plastics held the show's pattern of attributing elements of their characters' focus to personalities, and all honesty, a much more surface character, vain and superficial, could scarcely be imagined, and with a more effulgent or forthcoming account shared by friends, family, or staff to support or reject this, is about the level of attention I feel like sparing here. Beyond admitting I have no trouble believing what's been asserted, be finally at rest. Finally, this cataloged a couple dedicated tapes, Terriers and Undercovers, a J.J. Abrams spy dramedy, and noted familiar face Ben Schwartz. I know I've talked about his presence in my collection in the past, in Parks and Rec as Tom Haverford's friend and sometimes business partner John Raffio in episode 51, and as a movie blogger in Jenna Elfman's office in Accidentally on Purpose in episode 92. And I feel like running into him again in Undercovers. Let's pull this trigger, celebrate 9 years of VideoFuzzy by naming a 48th Golden Thread, official or otherwise, as Ben Schwartz. Accidentally on Purpose was his debut in my collection, actually, showing up in 2009. He was in Peep World, I mentioned spy dramedy Undercovers. He was in Arrested Development, Parks and Rec, Lego Movie 2, BoJack Horseman, Bob's Burgers, and the Sonic the Hedgehog and Star Trek franchises. He's got a fantastic comic instinct and a fun presence for physical comedy as well, as half the Saperstein twins, John Raffio and Mona Lisa Saperstein, are self-played by Jenny Slate. These two over the years created an increasingly hilarious presence in Parks and Rec. And bonus, as of this episode, I was finally able to track down a long-sought, long-beloved alt from the two-parter featuring Aziz Ansari as Tom Haverford, Ben Schwartz as John Raffio, Jenny Slate as Mona Lisa Saperstein, and Billy Eichner as Craig Middlebrooks getting ready for the Unity concert at the end of the 6th season. Get us started here, Craig.
Thomas, I have to work all day at the Unity concert. If you're going to pull this off, we need more people.
I know, and I didn't want to do this, but I called in some reinforcements.
Did someone call for a party zoo? A pig at the end.
Craig, this is my friend, John Raffio, and his twin sister, Mona Lisa.
All right, so we got a four-way going with my ex, my brother, and this rando? Okay, if that's where the night is going.
It's 9 a.m. What? It's not a four-way, and I need your help.
Ugh.
You owe me a favor.
I owe you a favor?
Oh, boy.
I stole $2,000 from you. I'm the person that sneaks into your home every night and eats your food. Right. So I do owe you a favor.
I mean, I'm going to help you out.
okay? And she's gonna help you too, because you owe me a favor. Do you remember the time you made me dress up as you and go on a date with one of your ex-boyfriends? And then the guy immediately figured it out and beat me up? Oh, now you remember what I beat up?
Yeah. Who are these people? They are awful and horrifying, and I love them.
I like your energy, hombre. What do you say you and I ride go-karts later?
I want to go horseback riding.
Deal.
Yeah, that mostly focused on her, but I do not care. Schwartz, misidentified in episode 92 as Schwartzman, by the way, my bad. Error. Truly entertaining presence, ready to manage high-tension scenes and spy stuff. I saw him in this set, Undercovers, handling assets in the field, and also ready to be hilarious as needed.
She is the worst person in the world. The worst! Huge skank, terrible, but thank you.
Thank you, third new golden thread this episode. Fun everywhere I see you, Ben Schwartz.
The worst! She's the worst in the world.
Diving into my classic collection.
In my classic VHS-to-DVD collection, this time covering discs 2001 through 2025, I encountered several dedicated tapes with sometimes 3, sometimes 4, and in one case 6 episodes recorded back-to-back. I was able to do this better with some shows than others, but it certainly makes for easier cataloging. Grey's Anatomy 7th season episodes 2 through 5 covered the rebuilding of the lives of those doctors following a great traumatic event, a gunman stalking hospital staff at the end of season 6. One of the episodes, Can't Fight Biology, on discs 2012 and 2013, as I mentioned up there in Cross Connections, were stuffed full of familiar faces, including Diane Farr, Frances Conroy, established Golden Thread Christian Clemenson, and newly minted Golden Thread John Curry, which is sufficiently intersectional I pulled it up for a tighter view. The episode opens on Meredith and Derek learning terrible news for the couple's prospects for conceiving, introducing probably most people to the concept of the hostile uterus. Meredith has fibroids that will make conception difficult. There's also the usual nonsense of too many people crammed into Meredith's late mom's place. Lexi's annoyed that her sister, Meredith, seems to share all her confidences with April. Christina and Owen are looking at lofts, and Frances Conroy, 6 feet under, has run her vehicle into a laundromat, claiming momentary distraction. One of the patients admitted from that collision is Diane Farr, more usually in my collection Rescue Me and Numbers. She's really hoping to get treated and released because she's been diagnosed with Huntington's disease, which is hereditary and progresses to muscle spasms and dementia. She wants to cram as much life as she can into what small amount of time she has left, and, well, it gives Meredith a lot to think about. The reason her mom's place is open for everyone to be staying there is that Meredith's mother, super surgeon extraordinaire Dr. Ellis Gray, died of Alzheimer's in the 3rd season. Along with learning of her poor prospects for childbirth in the wake of her miscarriage, Meredith is potentially carrying that degenerative disease as well, or could pass it along to any child capable of surviving her hostile uterus. Elsewhere, Alex Karev is working with Dr. Arizona Roberts and her girlfriend Callie on a pediatric bone cancer case. The young man is a super talented dancer, but he could lose his leg to bone cancer. He asks Karev to find an alternative solution to amputation. Newly minted golden thread in this effort, John Curry plays his dad, who is a little too sports-focused, but is clearly supportive. And holding to the theme of passionate pursuits, Christian Clemenson has been growing worms in his digestive tract. The worms, he says, treat his asthma. He hasn't had an asthma attack in 6 months. Unfortunately, he's developed a septic blockage, and Dr. Bailey has to operate. They try to find non-invasive treatments, but these are ultimately not going to work. He's heartbroken. He's committed to seeing the experiment through. When you find something you're this passionate about, he says, you keep going. Meredith gets a blood draw to test if she's carrying the gene for Alzheimer's. Derek says she shouldn't know. Any potential pregnancy they manage, he says any gene Meredith's carrying or possibly their child, they'll deal with it as it comes up. She has it out with her sister Lexi being upset for keeping secrets. Meredith says April was there when she miscarried, so that's why she knows what the follow-up meeting with the gynecologist is. Stop being jealous. Speaking of jealousy, Frances ultimately confesses that she ran her vehicle into the laundromat because she saw her ex-husband in there doing laundry for his new girlfriend, Jimmy. The police have been waiting for her to be stable enough to take her statement. Oh, she says, fortunately the medical staff can't tell anyone because of doctor-patient confidentiality. Lexi and April assure her that's just for medical information. She just confessed to a crime. She endangered other people's lives. She is absolutely on the hook for that. Still unconvinced, she does get carted off in the end. Episode closes out with Christina buying Owen a loft, the one converted fire station that he loved, the one with the firefighter's pole. He thought she didn't love it. Yeah, she said, but you love it, and I love you. So we'll make it work, she said, pouring champagne into plastic cups. Through-line theme for the episode was passion. That young man, they were doing everything they could to save his leg because he had such a passion for dance. Maybe his father would have preferred him to be a football or baseball star, but he was supporting him in ballet because, he was clearly passionate about it. And also, he was really good at it, too. Diane Farr had such a passion for life, wanted to enjoy as much of it as she could before her body denied it to her. And Frances Conroy was angry at her faithless husband. His church choir girlfriend, Kimmy, she smashed her vehicle into the laundromat, risking a lot of lives in the process. And Christian Clements, and also Jerry Espenson of Boston Legal, tried to convince everyone of the efficacy of his medical experimentation with parasitic worms he claimed cured his asthma, past the point he was risking death for them. Solid storytelling throughout. Next, anyone who wanted to has watched The Roast of Kevin Hart on Netflix. Glad I was sitting down when I saw Eric Andre was involved. Yep, hard to ignore Fluffy's level lately. That guy used to be so sweet. Lizzo, alleged comedian Tony Hitchcliffe, apparently the reason we've all heard about this dumb thing at all, and the reason I'm talking about it, Chelsea Handler, loved that she turned up in this collection hosting the 2010 MTV Video Music Awards at archived discs 2006 and 2007. She called out the blatant racism on display in some of the material, and Netflix is right there if you feel like tracking it down. Couldn't be me. I'm just going off what HuffPost reported. I'm sure that they were considered a politic gathering of minds, exchanging japes, spoofs, and late satire. I did love that someone took it on themselves to address George Floyd jokes, which, real talk, I think the heat death of the universe will be too soon on that topic, because Kevin Hart was apparently too busy laughing his damn butt off. Also on disc 2006, I had occasion to mention Jenny Slate as Mona Lisa up there. I encountered an episode of The Simpsons titled Lona Lisa, which interested me not just because it featured the voice of Facebook mogul Mark Zuckerberg. It was back in 2010, before we knew better, and Chris Hansen of To Catch a Predator, which, the possibilities seemed like they'd been endless. The primary plotline for this episode, Grandpa Simpson is doling out bequests to his family, each of whom get $50. Marge buys a fancy pants handbag and finds herself living the good life. Fashion status-conscious types float her along to the head of what lines as her handbag grants entree to a life of hitherto unknown ease. Meanwhile, Lisa seeks to be more practical with her bequest. This was of interest to me because that was my senior honors thesis in college, microloan programs. These loans, primarily secured by women entrepreneurs in developing nations at rates meant to maintain the program and cover defaults, but given the support structure among recipients, these are reportedly rare. They actually pulled in Muhammad Yunus, Nobel laureate and founder of the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, whose work figured heavily as source material for my thesis, so floating right down memory lane there. When I saw Lisa reaching out to support Nelson Muntz in a bicycle repair concern, I was interested where they were going with it. Well, it's a sitcom, so everything has to more or less reset at the end of episode, so we tracked a reductio ad absurdum. Nelson's neighborhood bike repair got so successful he considered dropping out of school, so Lisa takes him to a job fair to see Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, who turns out, bad example, he actually dropped out of school to run his little neighborhood project, just like fellow billionaires Richard Branson and Bill Gates. Woohoo! Looks like Nelson is done with school for good. When it all falls apart because of quality control issues, and Nelson realizes he does in fact need more school. For a while he was Principal Skinner's boss, though, so that was something, I guess. Last time I mentioned I'd replaced my slightly damaged archive copy of the Rocky Horror Picture Show and added the 2016 Fox television reboot Let's Do the Time Warp Again. Well, going through this set I encountered the Rocky Horror production of Brian Murphy's Glee, which was quite a bit of fun. Yes, on discs 2018 and 2019 I ran into Lea Michele as Rachel playing Janet, the late Corey Monteith as Finn playing Brad, Chris Colfer as Kurt playing Riff Raff, Naya Rivera as Santana playing Magenta, Heather Elizabeth Morris as Brittany S. Pierce playing Columbia, John Stamos as Emma Pillsbury's dentist boyfriend Dr. Carl Hull playing Eddie, Kevin McHale as Artie Abrams playing Dr. Scott, we had Cord Overstreet as Sam Evans playing the creature, and bringing him to life was the oh my wow presence of Amber Riley as Mercedes Jones playing Dr. Frankenfurter.
How'd you do? Why, just a sweet transvestite from sensational Transylvania.
The episode stitched rehearsals together with iconic song and dance numbers, underlying tension provided by Matthew Morrison as Mr. Shoe pining after Jayma Mays as Emma in her fling with John Stamos. Really, after whose entrance in leather biker jacket on a motorcycle no one had the slightest trouble believing. Relationship trouble is a constant theme in the more romance-centered sitcoms. Misunderstandings based on miscommunications make for easy writing. And consider a 20-minute sitcom, they still had to stretch this out with a recurring hat thing, but fourth ever episode of Mike and Molly turned up in disc 2002, and we had Billy Gardell and Melissa McCarthy in title roles, really leaning into that third date trope where if someone has 3 dates with you, they get sex. Except Mike isn't ready for intimacy. He's having serious body image issues, and instead of just saying that, he leaves Molly at her front door with barely a kiss goodnight and goes shuffling out a shot. So Molly thinks he's not interested and pretty much breaks up with him, which her mom and sister already start setting her up with someone else, which he thinks is a little sudden, and Mike doesn't know why she's broken up with him, so he's all despondent. He heads over to Overeaters Anonymous meeting, and she does too, which ends in a chase sequence through the streets of Chicago, which I think was supposed to be funnier than it actually was. In the end, Mike figures out that she thought he didn't like her, and both of them felt rejected because of both their past histories with rejection. But Mike assures her in a modified balcony scene, on Love's Light Wings did Mike this industrial-grade aluminum ladder ascend, that he is interested and finds her very attractive. They just need to move a little slower while he continues to work on his self-esteem. I don't think I archived too many more of this show, another Chuck Lorre production, but I did enjoy the energy of at least the early episodes. Not a terrible watch, but I kind of understand why they only got the one season. I mentioned up there as part of adding Ben Schwartz as Golden Thread, Boris Kodjoe and Gugu Mbatha-Raw as Mr. and Mrs. Steve and Samantha Bloom. 2 young and beautiful Angelino restaurateurs are called out of retirement by the CIA to spy, scheme, reminisce, and recreate the spy adventures they had as active agents. Their grumpy handler, Carlton Shaw, played by Gerald McRaney, has distinction like Austin Titchener, who have appeared both in The West Wing and Mr. Sterling, the latter starring Josh Brolin. Callback to my earlier conversation with Mikey Heinrich. Nice. Peeking at his IMDb, I suspect McRaney is another golden thread. I mean, I'm certain of it. He pops up all over my collection, but we can realize that dream of his to be so immortalized at some future date, surely. I'm still a bit self-conscious about the fact that in a series helmed by 2 talented persons of color, my commentary is primarily focused on 2 supporting roles played by white males. I'm not indifferent to that observation. I've noted that 2/3 of the actors identified as golden threads happen to be white and male, and while I've sought to more deeply explore and celebrate a broader range of talent in my collection, that certainly has not happened in these installments, no. Series leads Gugu Mbatha-Raw and Boris Kodjoe have absolutely been in other productions in my collection, but they are primarily in this one. I thought it was very sweet. Nick and Nora, Tommy and Tuppence, sort of Mr. and Mrs. Smith type structure to build a storyline around. On the face of it, far more wholesome than J.J. Abrams' Alias production, although dark subplots swirled from the earliest episodes. I've talked about this with Chuck and Alias and Covert Affairs and Human Target, that production companies always want to have spies doing spy adventures on the TV, but spy adventures are often pretty dull, like gathering evidence on potential mole or surveilling confidential informants, way more Rubicon than Mission Impossible. So the pretty married couple reactivated for international intrigue layers in additional tension as the love of their life is also sometimes in danger. Borrowing a James Bond parallel, high-stakes international whatever these days look a lot more like Ben Whishaw slouched over his phone than Desmond Llewellyn firing a missile out of a boombox and calling it a ghetto blaster. Speaking of creative anachronisms, Stana Katic and Nathan Fillion as Detective Kate Beckett and writer Richard Castle had quite the insoluble little puzzler when a pellet fired from a front-loader musket was the apparent murder weapon in a 3rd season episode called Punked that turned up in disc 2003. The victim was dressed in 19th century garb, and the show spent far more time than was necessary speculating that he was killed by a time traveler. When it is revealed that it was part of a steampunk collective, the investigation takes a much more conventional turn. I'll say this, the sequence where Castle and Beckett tried to achieve any accuracy at all with a 200-year-old musket was quite amusing, as was their visit to a steampunk play space. I mentioned Rubicon up there, I just can't. The finale, all the episodes leading up to it, I'm just thrilled they've all turned up. I'm going to need time with these productions. Once it was clear they'd only have one season, they tried to reorganize it so the double agent was the head of the division itself, which in 2010 would have satisfied a lot of cynicism and calls coming from inside the house on 9/11 and junk bonds and Colin Powell addressing the UN with a vial of anthrax. There's a beautiful full circle moment when a bouquet is brought to the office of Michael Christopher as division head Truxton Spangler with a 4-leaf clover tucked into the envelope. Similar to the crisis at the top of the series, we're told the finale solves a train crash that killed James Badge Dale's character Will Travers' father-in-law David Hadas, played by Peter Garrity, but I need to see it again. And I shall. My initial instinct that I'll probably need to come back to these later once my cataloging is done is looking increasingly prescient. At this point, I'm clinging fondly to the notion I might manage to get this episode to you all before June, and my next music episode before July. My initial notes upon cataloging the series finale ran as follows. There's like a season's worth of context in the series finale, and I'm gonna need to sit with this. Glad it got made. Glad I've got it. It's fiction beginning to end, but wow, what intense storytelling. When I take it up again, end of this whole process, I've got a box set of Rubicon, The Company, The Grid, and the Ipcris file to ruminate upon, and oh, I shall. Time enough at last, and all that. Finally, I'll wrap this segment with a couple episodes, so far as I know, series of production have little to do with each other, The Office and Community. The 7th season Halloween episode of The Office featured Zach Wood's character Gabe Lewis dressed as Lady Gaga making a poker face reference, while the 2nd season Halloween episode of Community featured Jim Rash as Dean Pelton dressed as her ladyship, also making a poker face reference. Fun. Well done, gents.
Checking out my current collection.
In my current direct-to-digital collection, I've already talked about the Madonna movies that I archived. Looking forward to watching Evita one of these days. And I've been watching, and in some cases I suspect re-watching, old movies on TCM, a hardly unpleasant use of my time. But I can mark the date directly, middle of March. The National Theatre presents Ncuti Gatwa in Oscar Wilde's delightfully camp send-up of The Importance of Being Earnest, the society farce of assumed and mistaken identities. The universe of Bridgerton absolutely paved the way for this 2025 presentation, which opened on Ncuti in a sumptuous ball gown of hot pink, mock playing the piano or near as done, a reference to his character's momentary entrance. Plenty heads up that we may safely expect the unexpected. For all that, the presentation was largely as envisioned. God was an absolute joy as Algernon Moncrief, while Hugh Skinner delighted as Jack Worthing. Sharon D. Clark towered as the imperious Aunt Augusta, while Ronke Decalogue delivered Gwendolyn Fairfax a bit more oftener through her nose than might have been absolutely necessary. She proved a remarkable foil for Eliza Scanlon as Cecily Cardew, as overseen by Amanda Lawrence as Miss Prism. I loved the energy throughout, the notion, which is always available, that the Doctor had inveigled himself into London society as a lark was entirely in keeping with the rogue episode of his first season as the Doctor, though Algernon was decidedly more supercilious and quite a scamp. The handbag objection established Lady Augusta Bracknell formidably as a force of nature, and Jack's late breach of the fourth wall by the mention of the fourth wall was utterly charming.
And what? I have already asked you to go! I don't want you here! We've covered the scene change! Just go!
Attention, children, quietly. Today I read Book Report. I see I must needs perforce explain myself forthwith. Oh, that was the National Theatre 2025 presentation of Oscar Wilde's 1895 production of The Importance of Being Earnest. Track it down, watch it, certainly. Well worth it. In the past couple of months, I've been reading a lot of 19th century literature, partially because I'm an adult human and can decide how to spend my time, in part because I've forever wanted to and finally decided to, and in part because now I feel like I want to be as interesting as an 18-year-old girl in 1840s England. Seriously, and probably I need to read way more than the ones I have so far. I've read Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights by Assorted Brontes. I still want to read Emma, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, all by Jane Austen. I knew my sister had done a deep dive on Jane Eyre 1,000 years ago, and between finally binge-watching Bridgerton last year, adding another hour of walking to my fitness routine, and having to do something with my Audible account, I decided to start with these titles, spoken of fondly over the years by All About Agatha podcasters Kemper Donovan and the late lovingly remembered Catherine Brobeck. Jane Eyre marks the days of a young, headstrong orphan packed off to boarding school by her unsympathetic aunt. Her forthright nature and nascent sense of justice is tempered with kindness and nurtured by instruction until she matures and for 2 years takes a teaching position at the school before being hired on as governess in a country manor. She forms an unusual alliance with the master of that house, Mr. Rochester, a man of strange affect and behavior, not much engaged with society, and as the story unfolds, keeper of a disastrous and ultimately destructive secret. I never read it, maybe you haven't. I'll not spoil the story, be 180 years old at this point. Jane flees the manor to escape him and encounters the most unusual set of coincidences that lands her up. New benefactors, a new job she'd scarce credited, but a bequest arising from the most tenuous of family ties. Circumstances nearly thrust her into a second alliance, one that could take her to the other side of the planet, but she demurs, knowing her own heart, and following thus, reconnects to her old love in her refreshed circumstances. One could interpret a life lived as happily ever after. Wuthering Heights I just finished and enjoyed, although please forgive my summarizing them as so many Kardashians. He shunned me, I shunned her, I should never be happy, and neither shall she. I'll arrange them to be married and miserable. Frankly, I had already forgotten who everyone is, and the level of detail housekeeper Mrs. Dean recounts truly gasps my flabbers. From the menage Mr. Lockwood encounters nigh the opening of this Byzantine interpersonal, my gods, with dreams and ghosts and weeks-long illness, a marriage sparks a jealous and pernicious rage. Sister marries unadvisedly, sends letters of the bulk of books. Her brother wouldn't stir a foot to assure her care. In flight for her life, infant child in tow, entire lives led and lost, generations of feuding. Oh, are they counties removed from each other? No, they're 4 miles away. He's always over there in the garden. Legitimately, Edgar strikes Heathcliff one blow and Catherine takes to her bed for the rest of her life. They're the only people in the universe, too. Like, no one intercedes on anyone's behalf. No nosy neighbors. Maybe anyone in Gimmerton hearing these goings-on would ride up and call. For God's sake, the place is better than television. Also with the recommendation, the All About Agatha co-hosts, I read the somewhat more contemporary Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, written nearly a century along and published in 1938. That one pushed the Gothic horror elements to the very limits with isolation, desolation, sour mistrust, alienation. Okay, so our narrator, we never learn her name. We learn that she met her husband, the widower Maxim Winter, while traveling companion in Monte Carlo, and the very silly circumstances surrounding her union with a man otherwise steeped in dread foreboding. An utterly incomprehensible lack of communication between these newlyweds who have nothing but time to talk about stuff leaves her feeling like her new husband compares her always and in every way unfavorably to his late wife. We learn more about his family, the surrounds, the staff at Mandalay Manor, and the circumstances of his late wife's death. Our nameless narrator meets a harbinger on the shoreline near her boathouse, from whence the late former Mrs. de Winter, Rebecca, sets forth on her final fatal voyage, sunk beneath the rolling waves. The manner in which every word is drenched in suspense and ill-feeling, how uneasy the new wife feels in this space from which her husband is so often away, which she is never made to feel as truly her home, and as we learn by turns why this is. It seems to me like 3 candid conversations would have resolved about 98% of this novel, and later, when, say, the shipbuilder reports what irregularities he noted at the inquest, not one person involved in the investigation suggested that new and further damage could be attributed in any way to maybe, say, a ship crashing into it, or currents and eddies in the harbor was sank beneath. Oh, that boat was 5 feet from the shoreline. It could never have hull damage from it's been under there for a year. I feel like there was pressure that people who crime are not allowed to get away with it in these stories. Wherever the pressure came from, or the word count expended on reducing the killer's culpability and asserting a motive for Rebecca's suicide, and how she was truly an awful person, admired by equally awful people, instead of just letting the murderer get away with it, was a lot. I didn't love the ending, and again, if people would just friggin' talk to each other, well, hard to say, but I'm not sure there'd be a novel at all, or at least I feel certain there was more for us to know about the woman telling her tale than she actually shared with us, who she was, how she lost her parents, where all this dread and insecurity had taken root in her soul. I wouldn't have minded a chapter on her backstory at all. Other reads after the All About Agatha interview of Margot Douaihy, the author of so far a trilogy centered on Sister Holiday, a 30-something punk rock lesbian nun in New Orleans. I read the character's debut in Scorched Grace. I wasn't quite as enthusiastic. To be fair, it was presented to me as American noir detective fiction, which isn't my favorite. Douaihy has a great sense of place and setting, although I was starting to attribute to word count requirements for how much every scene submersed me in how hot, how humid, how utterly New Orleans everything was. Our lead characters were Sister Holiday and Fire Inspector Magnolia Verveau. The snarky antipathy in the wake of arson turned fatal made sense. There are so few people even at St. Sebastian Catholic School, it limited the potential for whodunit. When we learned who was behind the first fire and then the second and all subsequent crimes, Sister Holiday heard the confession. She was then surprised to find Verveau acting on it. Verveau having overheard that conversation outside the courthouse, further having witnessed Sister Holiday beat up a student elsewhere, and for someone taking such pride in her investigative abilities, the fact that Sister Holiday failed to observe this opioid addict in unflattering jeans and Mater. She was driving around in Mater from Pixar's Cars, a real hoopty. She occasionally rammed into other vehicles and other crime scenes. I'm supposed to be taking any of this seriously? Except for some athletic sex scenes from Sister Holiday's past that in one instance broke a bed, and a few other graphic depictions of sexual assault and drug abuse. The school setting and the fact that she's a nun kinda read as young adult fiction. It has similar structure. Personalities were pretty uncomplicated. One of the nuns was an utter pill, another was a sweetheart, and then there was a student who was basically Roger Klotz from Doug. The book was jumping up and down, pointing at throughout as the arsonist, which seemed like a pretty good indication that he wasn't. The author doesn't like cops. Point one of them was horrifyingly inappropriate with Sister Holiday in the course of his investigation, so it's gonna resonate with some audiences. And in truth, some characters are tolerably complex, and our narrator numbers among them. Her backstory absolutely carries the weight of the time we spend with her, but her Encyclopedia Brown case log seems like it would not merit long review, nor the faith she invests in her investigative abilities. I likely will not be reading any further. And with that, it is, as always, well past time to get this one in the feed. Thanks again so much, always, to musician, but also blogger and media critic extraordinaire Mikey Heinrich for the, as trademarked, brilliant insight. So much fun checking in with you again. And thank you all so much for checking in on my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com. For past episodes, add, follow, and subscribe VideoFuzzy wherever you get your podcasts. If you get a chance, check out my VideoFuzzy the Soundtrack entries as well. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites via email to tjam1970@yahoo.com or through my VideoFuzzy pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing. It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find it together on VideoFuzzy.